Today, after a month with Jeremiah, we are going to conclude this season of creation worship series. As we do that, as we go into that, I invite you to take out the white strip of paper that was given to you. Write down a thing or multiple things that are in need of renewal. Write down a thing or things that are in need of renewal. So for the next, I'll give you 15 minutes because I know my sermon will go 15 minutes. 15 minutes to write down a thing or multiple things that are in need of renewal. At the end of the sermon, I'll invite you to come up forward to place that piece of paper into this bowl in front of me, which symbolizes us giving it to God, the living water. So if something speaks to you during the sermon, something or things that are in need of renewal, please write it on that strip of paper. From this past Wednesday to Friday morning, I attended a retreat as part of a 3-year program called Creating a Culture of Renewal. And one of the first activities as part of this retreat was to make a magazine collage to the response to this question. And the question was, what are the mountains that are in my way? What are the mountains that I need to overcome? So on that collage, with some pictures, 2 things I wrote down. The first one is finding meaning of life by what I achieve. So that was the first mountain that I was trying to overcome, that craving for meaning of life by achievements. And the second one, I also wrote my obsession for perfection. So that was my second one, my obsession for perfection. So these are the mountains that are very visible to me. To me, these are very obvious and clear. And these are the things that I constantly and intentionally am aware of in all the things that I do and all the things that I say. The Jeremiah passage that we read this morning is kind of hard to read, right? Because it is about a real estate transaction based on biblical laws, which as a person who never had an experience of purchasing a piece of land, I found it hard to relate to this Jeremiah passage, chapter 32. So it is very important for us to understand the full context of the whole situation where this reading is coming from. So Jerusalem was surrounded by the army of Babylonia. So at any given moment, the armies along the hillsides and valleys around the city walls of Jerusalem could swallow the city without any problem. So you can feel the fear of the people as they were peeking over the towers of the walls to the movements outside the walls. And feeding off from this enormous tension among the people, Jeremiah was captured in a jail. So it was like an in-house court while other things are going on outside, right? It was like the worst of the worst situation. And in that situation, Jeremiah gets this idea of purchasing a land from his cousin, a field in Anathoth. And that Anathoth area was 3 miles north of Jerusalem. So it wasn't even inside the Jerusalem walls. It was purchasing a land outside of where all the enemies were camping. Why this nonsense? Why this nonsense? Because Jeremiah was able to see a future that no one else could see. The 17 shekels of silver was a investment, a dramatic investment into that future. One thing that was really bold about this prophecy was that it was very public. This whole process was done in a very public way. So beginning in verse 10, he said, I signed and sealed the deed, had it witnessed, and weighed out the silver on the scales. I took the deed of purchase, the sealed copy containing the terms and conditions, as well as the unsealed copy. And I gave this deed to Baruch, son of Neriah, the son of Maaseiah, in the presence of my cousin Hanamel and of the witnesses who had signed the deed, and all of the Jews sitting in the courtyard of the guard. Can you imagine going public with your real estate transaction? I can imagine going public with my latest Amazon purchase. So all of the Jews sitting in the courtyard of the guard was witnessing this transaction. It was bold. So going back to the retreat experience, on the third day of the retreat, the last day, as we were wrapping up, it was like closing, and the leader asked us, what was your favorite part of the retreat? What was your favorite part of the past 3 days? And when it was my turn to share around the circle, I said, everything up to what happened on the second day. Everything was my favorite up to what happened on the second day. So, before I share what happened on the second day, I will say that I'm sharing this with the confidence that I have processed enough with my emotions and my personal minds around it, and I firmly believe that this story will function as my witness to hope and growth. So here's what happened. So to give you a little bit of context, this is my second year of that 3-year program. And one of the learning objectives for the second year round is to learn how to be an effective mentor. So those who are in third year mentors the second year, and the second years, like me, mentors someone from the first year. And in this year's program, there was someone in the program that I had known for a while. And I know the person's gifts, but I also know how challenging this person can be. When I look back at my relationship with this person throughout the past, there were moments that I felt like we were connecting, but there were more moments, that I felt like it was better for me to keep that distance in order to protect myself. Then I'll feel bad about that, feeling sorry for that person, so I would reach out again. Then it repeats, right? So after several years of doing that, I was finally at a comfortable distance with this person where I could do both, to connect and to be a listening ear. To able to dive in, but also being able to take my foot out when it needs to be. Anyhow, on that second day, this person was on the list. So we had this list on a big chart with the names of the mentees, the possible mentees. So we were praying together. And it may have been just me. It almost felt like the consensus in the room was that I would choose that person to be my mentee, as I had a pre-existing relationship with, where others did not. So I felt the pressure around the circle. Everyone was waiting for my answer. The leader thought it would be a good match for me. She verbally said it out loud. But I know for sure that there will be a moment that I will suffer during this year-long process of mentoring with this person. That little moment felt like hours and hours, like years. I could feel the heat in my face, sweat running down my back. Everyone else already picked their mentees. and I was debating with very limited options. It was one of the two. The leader felt this tension, invited us to a time of prayer to listen to what God is saying to us in our hearts. And as I was praying, deep in my heart, I was hearing these words: "You can. You can." Wait, what? Do you mean I can do this mentoring, or do you mean I can't say no to this public pressure? What do you mean, right? The leader invited us back to open our eyes after a few minutes and asked me, "Yunki, what did you hear God speaking to you?" And until that very moment, I was debating, to be honest with you. So I pretty much trusted whatever came out from my mouth. And I said this: I decided to not be a mentor of this person. And that whole process was an extremely difficult process for me. The emotions were still at a very high level. To deny someone in a public level like this, to deny another pastor before the eyes of other pastors around this conference, to deny another Korean pastor before the eyes of American pastors. That was not an easy thing to do for me. Especially in that public setting. Perhaps the mountain that I needed to overcome was not just the obsession towards perfection, but it is something deeper. It is more concerning about what other people think of me that leads me to be obsessed with doing things the right way, so that it doesn't cause any trouble because of me. I was worried about what this denial of someone would say about me as a pastor and as a Christian. I felt exposed. I felt very vulnerable. I felt weak. I felt and was praying that I need you, God, right now, right here. I need you. I felt like hiding like Adam and Eve, feeling so naked, open, revealing my humanness, the imperfections in public. There was no place to hide. So I prayed, I need you, God, right now, right now. But my group's response, who were all watching me going through this phases, they weren't disappointed by my choice. They had their thumbs up when I finally clearly said no. They had their thumbs up. It almost felt like they were eagerly and prayerfully waiting and rooting for me to say that 2 letters out loud. I learned one thing that day. I grew that day. And that growth is not only by more information and knowledge and wisdom, but it is through a painful and hopeless times. And that pain is so real, like the very real situation where the people of Israel was going through under Babylonian Empire. And I learned that the mountain before me, as real as it is, I was the one who created it. I learned that. After Jeremiah purchased this land, outside of the Jerusalem walls, in the wake of the enemy swallowing up their possessions, their loved ones, and mostly importantly, their identity. He prophesied, "For this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Houses, fields, and vineyards will again be bought in this land." So it ends with hope. Ends with hope. So, as I was sharing my own personal stories, I will invite you to write something on your paper, or some things that are in need of renewal in your life. And I'll invite you to come to this bowl, which is a symbol of God's presence, the living water. And as a sign of putting our hope for renewal in God, place your piece of paper into the water. And there's a spoon. Give a little stir so it doesn't get mixed. When we do that, let us remember what Jeremiah was trying to say all along. The warning words, the sad words, sorrow, the threatening, all of that throughout the book of 30 chapters of Jeremiah, throughout this series that we heard. What Jeremiah is actually saying is that this isn't the end. This isn't the end. When this pain ends, I will come back to this land. When this pain ends, we will all come back to this land. And for this powerful message of hope, for that grace that fills our void, our weakness, our brokenness, our nakedness, which will renew us and the whole creation, we give thanks to God. Amen.